Hi, it's Diederik Gelderman here. Welcome back to video 3. Video 3 in our training series on the ignorance that besets our industry in regard to our practice finances. And today we're changing it up a little bit. Rather than doing a face-to-face, we're sharing some information through a PowerPoint slides and this audio. So you don't have to look at my face today. The reason I did that is a change of pace, and there's some stuff in here I'd really like you to focus in on, and I think I can explain it more effectively through these slides. So once again, there's a lot of resource material attached to the email and attached to this video. Please download that, print it off, refer to it, and use it as you see fit. So video 3, this video is all about answering the question, I don't know anything about my practice's KPIs, my practice's key performance indicators. So, on the slide, you can read what a KPI is, a key performance indicator is, so I'm not going to go through that. We'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. So in this training video today, we're going to answer the question, why should I use KPIs? How do I know which KPIs to use? How often should I measure my KPIs, and who in my practice should do it? What action do I take and where do I start? And that fourth point is an action plan or an action step that I'm going to map out with you right at the end of this video, just to make things easy for you and to give you a starting point, a kicking off point. So let's get started. So the first question, why should I use KPIs? Let me ask you this. Would you drive a car and not put your seatbelt on? Would you drive your car at night and not turn the headlights on? Well, KPIs are a little bit like a practice seatbelt or driving at night with your headlights off. With your headlights on. They're a security. There's a number of things they do. Security, they help you with security. Knowing that everything is on track in your practice, and frankly, allowing you to sleep well at night. They allow you to do some goal setting, to set goals and direction for your practices and to plan forward. Rather than planning by looking backward, would be like driving that car, not by looking through the front windscreen, but only by looking in the rear view mirror. So, work out where you're going, determine where you're going by looking forward, not by looking backward. The next reason is comparisons, to compare yourself against industry standards. But be careful here, because you need to be comparing yourself with the best and the best of the best. And be aware of many of the benchmarking studies, and many of the people that now put their data into benchmarking studies are actually the lower echelon practices. The best practices often no longer do it. So it's the average practices that many of us compare ourselves to, and you don't really want to compare yourself with the average. Don't compare yourself with the cream of the crap, as it were. Set a goal and compare yourself with truly the best. And part of that comparison is with what you were like as a practice last year with whatever your KPIs that you're measuring. Then obviously KPIs allow you to see the opportunities that exist and where they exist in your practice. And then the last reason is measurement, to measure oneself against your vision. Okay, whatever that vision is it best care, whatever that means to you, senior programs, annual health checks, compliance for a whole range of various clinical stuff, customer service ratings, the number of cat visits, or whether it's clinically relevant or clinically irrelevant. If it's relevant to you, it's important, and therefore you should measure it. So the data needs to be measured, data that's relevant to you. So let's summarize this here in one concise thought. Veterinarians who don't carefully read their KPIs, their financial outcomes and their financial measurements, run risks much as they would as in equivalent to failing to read medical charts and medical records and medical outcomes carefully. Your financial statements are your key diagnostic tools for managing your veterinary practice, for tracking revenues, tracking expenses, identifying financial problems, and ultimately increasing everyone's compensation. That includes yours. So let's move on to the next point. What KPIs should you use? And I've summarized it here in one brief point. It's your choice. Don't let anyone tell you what you have to use or what you're not allowed to use. KPIs are or should be flexible. They should change over time depending on as your practice focuses changes. So you might focus on annual health checks this year, and then next year you might throw in a feline friendly program, and you may add some feline friendly KPIs in. And once that's up and running, you may leave that sitting in the background but not measure it as harshly or as often, and you may throw in some customer satisfaction or some staff satisfaction score. So most likely there's going to be a core group of KPIs which are going to remain the same. This group will be the ones that are the primary focus and the drivers of your practice over the longer term. They may be financial, they may not be financial. There may be some financial component in there. Again, it's your choice. KPIs tie into your practice vision and direction, both in the shorter and the longer term. Examples here include, like I said, customer care or customer service ratings, senior care feline programs, staff and client satisfaction ratings, the percentage of new clients coming by referral, all those sorts of things. Okay, so they may be clinical or non-clinical, and I've got some clinical ones on the board, and just, they're not all of them. There's hundreds of them, but I'll just put some up. And they can be non-clinical. Other clinical ones, of course, include things like annual health check percentage, euthanasia percentage. Other non-clinical ones include the number of clients referring clients in their own term. The financial ones can include profitability, all sorts of various ratios, and go back to video 1 to have a look at the ratios. Puppy party enrollment, puppy party graduation, and a couple of other KPIs. Now, once you've determined what KPIs you're going to use, then you need to benchmark and compare them with something. Well, what are you going to compare them and benchmark them with? Well, you can bench them externally to your practice, in other words, to the industry. And as I said, be careful here, because there's lots of different ways to measure KPIs, and different practices, different practice management, computer software, different analytical models will measure KPIs differently. So you can actually be comparing your KPIs as an apple to someone else's orange. So, and the other thing is, don't be careful, because in a lot of benchmarking studies, only the lower tier or the average tier practices enroll. And so you could be comparing yourself to the lower end practices and to skewed samples. Now, also different practices will have different client types, different demographics, different cultures, and will also have a different focus. So there are substantial challenges to using external benchmarking. By all means use them, and I encourage you to use them, but be careful what you use and who you compare yourself with. Internal is brilliant. Now, in comparing your own data with yourself over time and setting the progressive harder and harder to attain benchmarks is brilliant, because it compares yourself with where you were in 2004 versus 2006 versus 2008 versus now in 2014-15. So you can see improvement or you can see backsliding, and as you change your focus and you change your KPIs, you can get a progressively higher standard for yourself. And the other thing, of course, is comparing people within your practice. So you can compare pathology as a percentage of production between the various veterinarians to see whether their standards of care are the same. In certain practices that I know, they compare euthanasia rates between various practitioners. You can compare pre-anesthetic screens between different admitting nurses. All sorts of things can be done. Now, that's the process of benchmarking there on a screen. Determine what you want to benchmark, understand your current performance, put in a plan to change it, study others to help you modify and mold and meld that plan, learn from that data, use the findings, adjust your benchmarks, etc., etc. Now, a couple of key things. Limit your KPIs to a manageable number. Choose, for example, some clinical ones, some non-clinical ones, and get a representative mix of what you want to focus on in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. If you choose more than, say, 12 or 15 KPIs, this might, or maybe I should say this will, become overwhelming and unmanageable for you, especially when you're starting off. So when you're starting off, start a small number, and as you become more facile, make the number larger. So it will become unmanageable, especially in the early, period of time that you're starting to use them. Now, change the KPIs over time as your practice focus changes, or as you change your parameters. A two-tier approach will definitely make life easier for you. And that two-tier approach involves the use of a dashboard, which is an upper tier with just 2 or 4 or 6 crucial to you parameters on them. And 2 that I find absolutely critical to be on an upper tier dashboard personally are revisit percentage and dental percentage, percentage of practice income that comes in as dentistry. And I know that practices, when they have great dental numbers and great revisit numbers, that 99% of the time those practices will be on track. So that's the upper tier, is the dashboard. And then you have a lower tier, which is much more comprehensive, much more complex, much more detailed, and you access that second tier if the dashboard is out of whack. So you can look at the dashboard on a daily, a weekly, or a monthly basis. The second tier, the lower tier, you'd really only look at that when things are out of whack, or maybe once a month on a regular basis, or every 2 months to dig deeper into that second tier. Now we get to the next part of the puzzle. Who looks after the KPIs and how often? So who needs to be the practice manager or the owner? The person or the people that have an overall picture, an overall vision of where the practice is headed and where it is now, the direction in which the practice is headed. They need to do the actual analysis or the examination of the data and to draw the conclusions and do the actioning. However, the preparation of the data can be performed by anyone. Any appropriate person who has access to the data can prepare it and have it on the manager's desk, let's say, by the 7th day of the next month. So by the 7th day of March, all the data for the year to date, February, will be on the desk. By the 7th of April, all the year to date data for March will be on the desk, etc., etc. Now, this data can be summarized in one page so that it's condensed and it's easy to manage and action. And that's very easy to do. Now, if giant corporations like, BHP, Dick Smith, McDonald's, Specsavers and all that sort of stuff can look at their data at close of business every single day and know where their business worldwide is up to, then surely a small business like a veterinary practice can put a system in place that you have the data by the 7th day of the next month. Now, I've done this with hundreds of practices, and I know it's possible and doable, and I know it's quite easy to do. It may appear to be challenging, but once you focus on it and make it happen, it works like clockwork. So how often do we look at the data? Well, as I said, the analysis and the actioning should be performed monthly and within 7 to, and I've been saying 7 days, and here I say 7 to 10 days. So I'll give you a little bit of leeway here of the end of the month. And the steps that you need to take are to compare the actual numbers that you've got with the budget that you've set for the financial data or the non-financial data or the clinical data or whatever it is that you're measuring. Okay, compare actual to budget. That's step 1. Step 2, investigate discrepancies, and not minor discrepancies. If it's out by $1 or a euro or a rand or $10 or 10 euros or 10 rand or $100, euros or rand or 0.5% or something, that may not be worth investigating and probably isn't. But if the discrepancies are significant, if the deviations are from actual or budget are significant, from what you target are significant, then action them. Dig deeper. Now, it may be that there's a small variation this month and a small variation next month and a small variation in the third month, and over 3 months that'll add up to a significant variation. You want to be aware of that, and even if there's small variations, if they are recurrent or consistent, then you want to take action early. So you need to take corrective actions to correct what's going on, dig deeper into the lower tier dashboards or dig deeper in the practice, find out what's going on, take corrective actions, and then either put plans in place to make sure that the correction is implemented and the correction occurs, Or if for some reason that it can't be remedied, then set new targets and monitor progress towards those targets. And as I said, it's really important to analyze and to follow trends. Mild deviations over time will add up to significant deviations. Now, the mild deviations as a one-off may be due to timing issues, and other smaller factors. So, for example, it may be that you've just bought a whole lot of stock in before the beginning of spring, flea tick control. It may be that Easter is in a different month this year. It could be that you've got a 4-pay month versus a 5-pay month. So if these discrepancies worsen or are still present over 2 or 3 months, then they need to be regarded as significant and they need to be actioned. So you need to ensure that you allow for little fluctuations, like I said, stock levels, 4 and 5 week months, Easter, local elections, local events, stockpiling of stock, stockpiling of mastitis treatments, and those sorts of things. Now, make this process easy for yourself, like I said, by using this 2-tier system, a dashboard and a deeper layer. This concept is a really, really sound one, and it means that you only have to look more deeply at the lower layer, the second tier, if there's a significant discrepancy in the upper dashboard. Now, initially, in your formative phases of developing KPIs, I would have a 2-tier dashboard, but I would look in detail at both tiers. While you're developing this system, in order to get a good understanding and develop good habits, I'd look at all the data, not just the dashboard data. But over time, you'll no longer need to do that. And remember, action too early rather than too late to prevent some of those things from happening. Just back on this dashboard. Before we get to the action steps, I just want to summarize this again because it's an important concept. A dashboard is or are critical or highly tracked, important or current focus items in the practice. These are on the dashboard. These are the things that are key to your whole business. And as I said previously, for me, there are 2 huge keys: revisit percentage and dental income as a percentage. Now, again, before we get to the actions, one more point. And I'm often asked this, if we hit our KPIs, if we hit our goals, and let's say whether that's an individual person or a department in the practice, and the department may be the vets or the nurses or the techs or the receptionists, or it may be a little team like a vet, receptionist, nurse team. Should I pay a reward for that if they meet their goals and their targets? And my answer is, why not? Why not have a reward system in place for every possibility, whether that's individual, whether that's team, whether that's department based? If all the KPIs are on track globally, then why not? And the reward system may not be money. I'm not saying give them $100 if they meet target, but maybe give them time off. They can go home at 4 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock on full pay. They might get an extra day sick leave. They might get an extra day holiday. You might give them an iPad as a thank you. You might give them a new microwave for the kitchen in the practice. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and I'm very much into non-financial rewards. I find they work better, and I'm also into rewards that are a surprise and become. They're not a right, they're a reward, because regular rewards often become a right, and then people get narky when you stop giving them that reward. So rewards, it's a little bit like the Pavlovian training concept. So rewards need to be intermittent. I think I've answered that question. So let's now get on to the action steps for you to take. So to lock in this information about KPIs and to make it happen for you, this is a summary of the actions that you need to take here and now. So firstly, determine a handful of 10 KPIs that are meaningful to you and relevant to you, and relevant to where your practice, your business is focused and headed. Get a monthly report of them within 7 to 10 days of the end of the month, and make sure they're on your desk in a 1-page format. Anyone can prepare the KPIs for you, but the practice manager or the owner need to analyze it. Okay? Use a 2-tier system with a dashboard with a small number of parameters on it and a second tier of more comprehensive data. Initially, look at all the data in detail, but eventually work out a system whereby you only access the second tier, the deeper layer, on an intermittent basis every 2 or 3 months, or when the dashboard is out of whack. During your analysis, determine what discrepancy has occurred, why the discrepancy has occurred, and take early remedial action. What discrepancy, why has it occurred, and take early remedial action. If you find during that analysis that the KPI is unrealistic, adjust it. Don't stick to a KPI that doesn't work. KPIs are flexible, as I said, right up front. If it's old or no longer valid, for example, if the practice focus has changed, or if it no longer fits within the practice vision, for example, discard the KPI. And over time, you're going to discard and delete redundant, old, outdated KPIs and replace them with fresh, pertinent ones that are relevant and pertinent to your practice's evolution and current focus. Realistically, KPI is a little bit like painting by the numbers. It's simple, it's easy and straightforward, and you'll be able to implement it in your practice. Like, if we don't know how to do nails, then, it's a simple paint by the numbers type scenario, 7 steps. And KPIs are that easy. Now, imagine how happy and contented you're going to feel, how well you're going to be able to sleep at night when you know that everything with respect to your practice's KPIs is shipshape. What a huge weight off your shoulders. Now, if you think that this material in this video and the material in the previous video is really powerful, you're absolutely 100% correct. It really, really, really is powerful. And once you combine it with an in-depth understanding of the psychology of pricing, the psychology of your client around money and what they're prepared to spend on pet care and on their pet, the psychology of markups, price pointing, and pricing in general. Once you have that psychology of price pointing, markups, and pricing in place, you'll be able to price products and services in your practice so the clients are going to buy them, even though they may be more expensive than buying it from the internet or buying it from your competitor. I know that sounds strange, and it's a fact. Otherwise, none of us would buy Rolex watches, Armani suits, or Gucci handbags or designer shoes. So the KPIs also need to be married to the costs of running your veterinary business and having an understanding of those costs in depth. Keep your eyes open for the next training video. It's going to be along in a few days. And specifically in that training video, we're going to look at the current state of the veterinary industry. The current state of the veterinary industry. And the key players, your key players in the profit game at your practice. And not all of these are human. We're also going to look at understanding your costs in a more detailed fashion. And then this is a key critical point. There's a lot of fine distinctions that make all the difference to being profitable or poor. We're going to analyze those in detail as well. So that's it from me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll look forward to catching up with you in the next training video. Bye for now.